Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of In the Gallery with Laura Ali. I am your host, Laura Ali, and today we are going to get into a few topics. So let's jump right into it. This week, we are going to discuss a few different cases, and here is the lineup that we're looking at. Mamta Bhatt has some updates with her husband, Naresh. Uh, Mamta still has not been located. Her body, they've been searching for her body in a few different areas, but we have not found her body yet. Her husband has been charged with concealment of a dead body, and there are some updates with his Google searches and just stuff that's pretty odd, where I definitely want us to talk about that. And then we're going to also go out to Nevada, Las Vegas, Nevada. Robert Tellis murdered Jeff German, and he was convicted this week. I actually started to get into this case at the tail end of it. I heard whispers about it initially, maybe about a year or two ago, but I really didn't get into it until this week. So I'm going to give you guys my perspective on that case and also my perspective on the jurors on that case. I just think it took them way too long to come back with a verdict with the surmounting evidence against Robert Tellis. Also, I want to talk about Sandra Birchman. If you guys are not familiar with the Sandra Birchman case, I am very new to this case. I just discovered it a few days ago. But then once I realized there was an association with the Sandra Birchman case and the Karen Reed case, my mind was blown, and it's definitely something to talk about. I don't know what is going on out there in the Boston suburbs with the police department, but there's some shady business going on, if you ask me. There's some shady business, and I think there needs to be higher entities that look into it, whether it's the FBI or whatever it may be, whatever overseeing uh, bureau that can look into this. Maybe there is a Massachusetts division that can look into this, but something's going on. I don't know what it is, but something's going on. So we're going to talk about that. And then in addition to that, the last topic we're just going to cover is just some local news that has happened in the area where it's just noteworthy. So that is this week, and I'm so excited to get into it with you guys. And without further ado, let's do it. So the first topic we said we're going to talk about is Mamta Bhatt. So Mamta, her husband Naresh was recently arrested for the concealment of a dead body, which would be her dead body. We do not know where Mamta is, as I mentioned initially, and the police and um, volunteers are still searching for her. They were looking for her in a local park. And as I may have mentioned in a previous video, Northern Virginia is very much a rural area. It's densely packed with forest, trees. Uh, I would say that is really the whole of United States. If it's not a developed area, if it's not a major city, outside even outside of a major city, you're going to find a lot of greenery, a lot of dense forest. That's just North America for you. So it's seeming like Narish may have disposed of her body outside. We don't know. We don't know where she's disposed of, and that's why we're still searching for her. But some things to that I found to be a little bit interesting about this case are the fact that so he was arraigned, or yes, he was arraigned last week. He was charged with, like I said, concealment. It's actually the actual charge is prohibition against concealment of a dead body, which is a class 6 felony in the Commonwealth state of Virginia. And that felony can carry a charge or a term up to no more than 1 year, um, but excuse me, no less than 1 year, but no more than 5 years. So hypothetically, right now, I would suspect that the state brought charges against him in order to keep him, knowing that they have the blood evidence. So they found a good bit of blood evidence and blood spatter within the master bedroom, within the bathroom. So that's enough for them to say, okay, let's hold him on this. We don't have the body yet. It's going to be hard to convict on murder without a body, but let's hold him on this. Let's keep him in our eyesight because it does seem like Naresh was planning to flee. He was planning to flee, and even more so of him planning to flee, it seems like he was planning this murder for some months. The Google searches that he had goes back some months, and the Google searches are quite terrifying as well. Some of them read, how long will it take, or how long does it take to get married after your spouse dies? Or I guess he was trying to figure out what is the social norm? How long is it? What is going to be okay without people raising an eyebrow? And it's like, I was talking to my sister about this because it was like, that's such an odd question to Google. Like that's an opinion anyway. That's someone's personal opinion. My opinion on how quickly you can marry after your spouse dies versus my neighbor's opinion are going to be completely different. So that's your life to live. But I guess he didn't want to come off looking super suspicious. But let me tell you what looks more suspicious than you marrying someone. You Googling that question prior to your wife dying or disappearing. That's suspicious. So forget Googling the question, live your life. But when you Google the question, now we know that you had something to do with her disappearance and or murder. Not smart. He's not smart. He thinks he's so smart. He's not smart. The next Google search is what happens to debt after a spouse dies. Now, this can also lend to motive. They probably were, struggling with debt. I believe she was a nurse. I believe she was a maybe a pediatric nurse or uh and they may have had student loan debt. I'm not sure. I think I'm 100% speculating on the student loan debt, but just being an American, student loan debt is absolutely insane. So I think most people that have debt have a good portion of that debt is student loan debt. So uh I'm just guessing based on their careers that maybe that's what it was, but even more than that, uh they it seemed like they live in a pretty nice area. I know that area of Northern Virginia can get somewhat pricey. So it's all those things that add or lend to motive because Narish was also trying to sell their home at the time. He sold his Tesla. So he was really trying to downsize and potentially flee. That's the only conclusion one can come to when you are Googling these questions, you are uh, taking these actions of trying to sell your home and get out of here. It's pretty clear and evident. Now, going back to what I initially said about Googling the questions, if you were planning this murder for months, and listen, by all means, I'm happy Narish is not getting away with this, and I'm happy that he's in police custody, but he's really not smart. If you were Googling this for months, you were planning this murder for months, why are you still here a month later after the murder? You did the murder back in July. Why are you still here in August? I suspect that he initially didn't think his initial plan wasn't to flee. If I had to guess, his initial plan wasn't to flee. He began considering fleeing once all the I say it like that, but the little buzzards around him, being concerned community members, started saying, where is Mamta? Where is she? You have news reporters tracking him down in parking lots. You have them showing up to his front door. Where is Mamta? So around that time, I would say is when he started to say to himself, hmm, maybe this won't be as easy as I thought. His plan was, and this is something that's so interesting because we have true crime in the modern day sense that we know it now, right? So we know we have social media, we have uh, all of these different platforms, cell phones, all of these different TV cameras, all of these different things that help us solve a crime much more quickly than we could have done in the past. And it just makes me think about all of those stories from back in the day where husbands, and maybe wives too, but I would say typically in terms of murdering, husbands are going to have the upper hand with murdering just on a physical level, period. So let's just say husbands just saying, oh yeah, my wife, she ran off and no one ever saw her again. You were able to get away with that. I would say up until the 80s, even 90s, maybe even early 2000s around Scott Peterson time. Scott tried to pull that and it was like, nah, Scott, that's not happening. But up until that point, you were kind of getting away with it. Hey, she ran away. Don't know where she went. And life went on. Naresh thought he could pull that. He thought he could pull one of those. Haven't seen her. She ran off. It's not the first time she tried to run off on me. So your guess is as good as mine. I am the sympathetic, the innocent father here, just trying to take care of my child, just trying to survive. I would love my peace if you guys could leave me with my peace, because I did not do anything to her. I mean, I will say it was pretty clear and evident in the uh reporter's interview of him that we covered here. He didn't have a concern, a care in the world as to where Mamta was. And he would really appreciate if you stop asking about her. That was what I got from him. And and at that time, we're just seeing him being interviewed. We have no physical evidence. I had no idea about the blood spatter. I had no idea about any of it, but I'm just watching him on camera and I see how he's acting and I didn't like it. So that led me to believe that he was involved with her disappearance. Like I said, back in the day, you didn't have cameras in people's faces immediately. You didn't have communities rallying up and social media rallying up and really with social media, it brings more than just your local community. It's bringing the world. I'm, at least 400 miles away from there and I knew about the case pretty quickly after it happened or, pretty quickly after it was announced. And here we are, adding more light to it, adding more concern and more eyes on this case. So this man cannot get away with it. We don't need you in our society murdering people and then pretending like they left on their own volition. We don't need it. So I'm glad that he thought he was smarter than the investigators and the community, than everyone else, but he's not. And as I continue to look into this case, I also noticed that back in February of this year, the police were called to their home. Narish was, I'm not sure if he was arrested, but I believe the claim was disorderly conduct. The police were summoned to their home for disorderly conduct. It seems like he wasn't arrested, but it also does seem at the time that Mamta reported that Narish would not give her some of her documents and destroyed her cell phone. Now, if you remember also from the interview that was done with the uh, reporter at his front door, he mentions He mentioned something about Mamta's passport, how she had her passport to go start a new job somewhere. Now, I believe that when some murderers commit murders, they, especially when you're very close to the victim, they take bits and pieces of the truth and they meld it in with their lie to cover up their crime. So when I read that, it sparked something in me because I realized that, wait a minute, Were the documents that Mamta was referencing back in February that Narish wouldn't allow her to have or was withholding from her? Could that have been her passport? Could that have been her birth certificate or other items you would need to be able to move on with your life and start over? I wonder because I just thought it was very odd that he brought up her passport during that time. And I suspect, I wonder if she was trying to leave him again and maybe she got her passport, maybe she was able to get to her documents and then he got to her first. I don't know, but it does seem like she was trying to leave him plenty of times before. This time in February could have been one of those times she was trying to leave him. And she also admitted, I'm I'm not sure if she said this to the police exactly. It says that she did, but I would imagine that if she told the police that she was a victim of domestic abuse, they would have arrested him. But maybe she had no physical signs of it. I believe prior to that February police visit, she had mentioned either to friends or to the police that she had suffered bruises in the months leading up to her disappearance. So she was physically being abused by this man, most likely mentally being abused by this man, and she tried to get away, likely trying to take her child with her, and he he prevented that from happening. And if you think back, so if this disappearance happened at the end of July, 4 months 4 months prior to that is when he started with these Google searches. That would have been around March. So that would have been around the same time, like February, March, where the police were called. It was escalating. It was definitely escalating, and he did not want to let her go. It's heartbreaking. I really hope that they can put this case together. Not, I don't want to say quickly. I want them to do it efficiently and with all of the relevant evidence to actually put him away. Narish and his attorneys decided to waive their right to a preliminary hearing that was scheduled for October 24th. And in addition to that, they're also going to put in a motion to waive their right to a grand jury indictment. They just want to go right to trial. They're saying, listen, we're okay with moving forward. Let's move forward with what you have. Now, there's one or two reasons why the defense would want to do this. One, they feel like the state does not have enough evidence, and they're just saying, let's, we don't even want to give you the time to prepare more evidence or to gather more evidence. We want to just go straight to trial. That was something that Alex Murdaugh, they tried to do in South Carolina. They were saying, let's just go straight to trial immediately. And they did go straight to trial, but it wasn't as quickly as the defense would have liked, and that was because evidence needed to be gathered. I mean, that's the reality of building a strong case. So that's what they're working on right now, and it does seem like Narish just wants to move this along. I personally, I would want the preliminary hearing. I would want the grand jury indictment. I want you to present everything as you would in the courtroom because that gives you an eye or a glimpse into the evidence they have against you. Now, they're going to share all the discovery with the attorneys. They have to. That's part of the trial process. But I, as the defendant, would want to know. I want to see how they're presenting this. I want to see what they're putting out there. Having something on a paper or having a bunch of files stacked up with, okay, this is the evidence we have against you versus the presentation and the theatrics and the dramatics that they come with at the courthouse. That is what I would want to see. So I feel like missing out on that, it can be one of two ways. You can either just say, you know what, I don't think you have enough evidence against me, so whatever. Or it could be that you have so much evidence against me, I don't even want to relive this. Let's just go through it. But if that's the case, wouldn't you just plead guilty and go about your day? So that's what he's not doing. So I think again, he thinks he's so smart and they don't have enough evidence against him. And they don't for maybe a murder, but they do for concealment of a dead body, it seems like, because that's what they charged him with. And if they have enough blood evidence to show, okay, this person lost however many pints of blood, and our human bodies can only hold but so much. It's pretty clear and evident they're no longer with us. So you may not even need a body to then continue with the uh, the murder charge. So we will definitely keep an eye on this. Uh, I I just think it's heartbreaking. This child is without mother, and I believe I saw that her family, Mamta's family, has come back over or has come over from Nepal to uh to take care of the child. To yeah, it's just heartbreaking. She was she was a young mom just wanting to live her life, and it's just sad when people are murdered by spouses. I know you're most likely to be murdered by your spouse, but it's just heartbreaking because it's like you thought this person when you married this person, you thought you were gonna either A, spend the rest of your life with them, but B, you never thought they would murder you or be your demise. It just breaks my heart. So hopefully we get some more updates on that soon, and hopefully they lock him up for a very long time. I don't think Virginia has the death penalty. I have to look that up. I'll look that up really quick and see if they have the death penalty. I don't think they do, but we'll keep an eye on it. Also, I do want to quickly mention that there will not be cameras in this courtroom due to the Commonwealth state. Um, they do not have cameras for criminal trials. They did for Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, but that was a civil case. So that's going to be slightly different. And due to the celebrity of it, I think that's also why they did have cameras in there. Let me just do a quick search. Does Virginia have the death penalty? Let's see. I'm just going to give you guys a real-time answer. Okay, Virginia is the first southern state to abolish capital punishment. I say if the punishment should fit the crime. I do think you need to keep the death penalty in your back pocket for egregious crimes. This is an egregious crime in my opinion. He needs to be put to death. And and I don't believe in the death penalty where it's like, "Oh, they're going to be on death row for 20 years." No. It needs to be, I would say, within that year. Now, let me just say this. I don't believe in death penalty for every single case. But when you have a case like this where there was no one else that could have murdered her besides Naresh, where there's DNA, where especially when there's child victims involved, no problem. Give them death. My issue with the death penalty is all the appeals that they can go through and then the amount of time it actually takes to put them to death. So, with that being said, sometimes, yeah, let them suffer in prison, but then it's like you still have a life. You're still living life. In prison, you still have community. That's sometimes what people just live for. It's just being around other people. So we'll keep an eye on it, guys. We will keep an eye on it. Um, so moving on, we will now talk about, let's get into the Robert Tellis case. I think his name is either Robert Tellis or Teas. I think he pronounces it Teas. I'm gonna say Robert Tellis. Mm, I don't think he deserves anyone's utmost respect. And throughout the trial, they called him Robert Tellis. So I think, it is what it is. Robert Tellis, if you guys are not familiar with this case, let's just get into it. Robert Tellis was public, a county administrator, I believe, or public administrator was his title. His job and role was to oversee, I guess, probate estates. So when someone passes away, he would oversee the state if in the event, I believe, if they didn't have an executor of their will or something like that. So say someone dies without a will and they have assets, they have a house. The state then, or the city or the county, then takes, um, I wouldn't say ownership, but I guess responsibility, guardianship somewhat over that property, and then they'll sell it and I think get the most money for the estate. I guess they could have a will in that case. Actually, I don't know. I don't know the details of it, but that was the gist of what he did. It's irrelevant. The details are somewhat irrelevant, but I say all that to say because he was elected into this role. You have to be elected. You run for this and you're elected. And then also you have to try to do your the best you can do for that estate. He came in and into the public administrator's office. And sometimes when those people come in to a new job and they're just like, I'm the boss and things are going to go the way I say they're going to go, whether you like it or not. And it's like, you can do that. Some people do that. I don't think that's the best way to lead and manage personally, but some people do that. I think you get more, I can't ever get this saying. You get more flies with honey than vinegar. Is that, I think that's the phrase. My point is, why alienate a new team that you're just coming on to? Build rapport, create good energy, and build off of that. And then when you do have those trying times, if you need to make adjustments within the organization, you can do it off of the rapport you built. Now, some people don't like change and some people still won't like him. That's fine and fair, but at least you tried to go in with good intentions instead of going in saying, I run this now and you better listen to me. And it's like, that doesn't win. So that's how he kind of came into the public administrator's office. He, Robert Tellis was married at the time. He was still married, still married. His wife actually gave a victim impact statement at the trial. So his his thing is though, in this office, he's very much condescending, rude, um, mean to a lot of the employees there. One of the employees, this story really struck a chord with me because I just thought it was odd. One of the employees said that he would harass and berate her so much that she thought about ending her life in the office so that he could find her body hanging in the office. And I said, whoa, that is next level. I mean, that goes to show the level of uh, abuse that some of these people felt they were going through, that you wanted to show your boss that you offed yourself, and to prove a point to him, you wanted to do it in the office. I think sometimes this is just a side note. This is a really side note. I came across a story about the woman. You may have seen the woman that was dead in Wells Fargo in her office for like 4 days. She was at her desk dead, and she didn't kill herself, but I think she had cardiac arrest or something. But no one noticed that she was dead for 4 days or so. It's like literally her body is decomposing in the office and no one noticed. Is there not a cleaning crew that comes by and notices that she's been in the same position at her desk for days on end? I say all that to say, I think sometimes we take work way too seriously. It's not our life. We have, hopefully you have a life outside of work. And work is not your end all be all. If work is your end all be all, I really do encourage you to get a hobby, to get something that you're interested in, because at the end of the day, that is just your employment. They owe you nothing and they will give you nothing in the end. So it's heartbreaking that this woman, this employee of the county, the public administrator's office, who reported to Robert Tellis, considered doing this to herself to prove a point and to hurt him in some way when she's just hurting herself is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to think that someone would go through that. So that kind of sets the tone, I think, of what was going on in this office. And in addition to that, although Robert Tellis was being real nasty to a lot of the employees in there, he was being very nice to one of them. Very nice. I think her name was Roberta. That was his side chick. his sneaky link, or his mistress, as we would call it back in the day. He was hooking up with her, cheating on his wife, and everyone in the office knew. They started to track them when they noticed that, okay, she's wearing a short skirt today, and they would go off, one would leave and then the other one would leave, then they would follow them. It's like, were they getting any work done in this public administrator's office? I don't know. Okay. If I was in Las Vegas, I would be very concerned as to how everyone was able to take all this time off and investigate affairs and doing all this stuff. It's like, and having affairs, it's just very suspicious to me, but fine and fair, things happen. um so they catch on video, the coworkers catch on video Robert Tellis and Roberta getting a little, frisky in the back seat. They catch it on video multiple times, but one of the videos is actually very clear. You see Roberta getting out of the vehicle. They both get in the back seat, which is like, okay. And then they get out and she's like smoothing down her dress to make it look like she hasn't had her dress hiked up for the past 20 minutes or however long it was. And it's just, it's so clear and evident that they're having an affair. And I think, and this is how Jeff German kind of gets pulled into this. So these coworkers then take this story, take all the information of all the hostility in the workplace, they take all the affair information, and they bring that to Robert Tellis. Excuse me, they bring that to Jeff German. Jeff German. Now, let me set the stage for Jeff German. Jeff German is a investigative reporter. He has been an investigative reporter in Las Vegas for the past 30 plus years. He came to Vegas in the 70s during the height of the mob in Vegas. And Jeff German came from Wisconsin, I believe. So he moved out there, Wisconsin boy, but really ready to get down to the nitty-gritty truth. He's a truth seeker. I I think that's what attracted me to this case, because I find myself to be a truth seeker. I believe myself to be a truth seeker. And Jeff German was a truth seeker, and he said, I'm going to get to the bottom of what's going on with the corruption with the mob in Vegas. And he did that. If you ask me, at that time, to do that in the 70s, that's straight gangster, because they could have easily offed you and put you down somewhere, and no one ever, in the Colorado River or something, and no one would have ever found you. But I will say, even the mob had enough sense to say, let's not off this investigative reporter, because guess what? All his friends are reporters. All his friends are truth seekers. All his friends are going to try to get to the bottom of this. So let's not off this guy. Let's just give him dirty looks. I think he might have gotten punched one time out in the bar, Jeff German, by a mob guy or whatever. But they kept him alive because they knew killing him would bring more attention to to them, instead of just allowing him to write his articles and just ignoring him. Uh, and as Jeff German continued to cover the mob, that was very compelling. But then, as time went on, also the mob had less of a stronghold within Vegas. It seems like, well, it could be partially due to Jeff German, partially due to the writing of his stories brought more attention to all the corruption there. And as so, a lot of these trials started to happen and prosecution started to happen, and the city somewhat got cleaned up. Vegas got cleaned up. As that happened, I guess Jeff German kind of worked himself out of that storyline, and he started then covering more corruption in politics, corporation corruption, different cases. That there was one case, I believe it was Susan Winters, if I'm not mistaken, where it was initially ruled a suicide, and I believe her husband was a doctor. I want to cover this case a lot more extensively, but uh Susan Winters was murdered. They ruled it as a suicide. Jeff German kept digging into it. He was like, nah, I am going to look into this and see what really happened to Susan Winters? Turns out the husband did it. Surprise, surprise, right? I'll cover that on another case, but another episode. But my point is that he started looking into a lot of cases where it it may not have been it may not have been solved. So he really did help out society. So that's Jeff German. Now, that brings us back to the women from the office in the public administrator's office approaching Jeff German with this story about Robert Tellis and the affair and all of the seedy deeds happening in the office, the hostility, the abuse. Jeff German picks up the story. The women were actually very shocked that he picked up the story, but they said, "Wow, he's really listening to us, and he picked up this story." Jeff German writes a scathing story about Robert Tellis. Brings up the affair, brings up the hostility, brings up all of these things, and with that, Robert Tellis loses his reelection bid. Now, I want to say it's very similar, excuse me, I have a little, very similar to the presidential election, right? So, like, we elect the president, but then there's still like a few months of an overlap before the next person actually comes into office. Seems to be very similar as with the public administrator. So, although Robert Tellis lost his bid, he was still in the position of being a public administrator. Now, what was coming out next was although he was not reelected, Jeff German was not letting this go. He still wanted to expose all of the dirty deeds that Robert Tellis has participated in while in office. So I believe that Jeff German even approached the mistress, was just trying to get additional information, and was trying to release the text messages between him and the mistress. Seedy, probably really seedy stuff going on there. Robert Tellis didn't like this. He did not like this at all. And there are some text exchanges between Robert Tellis and Jeff German, which seemed somewhat cordial, but then later you do see Twitter posts from Robert Tellis basically talking about how much he hates Jeff German. And other text messages and stuff. Everyone that knew Robert Tellis knew how much he hated Jeff German. Like, that was a fact. People came out and testified on that, to that fact. So now, fast forward to September of, I think it was 2022, 2 years ago. Right around this time, it was around Labor Day weekend as well. Robert Tellis devises a plan to murder Jeff German. Now, it wasn't a good plan, I'll tell you that. And that's, I think, what my nose is so itchy. I'm sorry, guys. That it wasn't a good plan because clearly, I mean, clearly he got caught, but if you look at the, let me see if I can pull it up for you guys really quick. If you look at Jeff German, excuse me, at Robert Tellis during this, okay, here we go. So this is Robert Tellis. This is him going for his reelection. He loses his reelection bid, as I mentioned already. But I'm gonna play this so you guys can see how ridiculous this is. I have him muted. I don't think what he's saying is really relevant. Okay, but this is what is relevant. This is what this man was wearing when he went to go murder Jeff German. You're wearing a bright orange construction jacket, black pants, a huge brim sun hat. Huge. You like even if he was up to nothing, like even if he wasn't up to a crime, a murder, If I saw someone walking down the street like this, I would remember that for the rest of my life. Why are you walking down the street like this? And what I think he thought was, they're in Nevada. People frequently cover themselves from the sun, especially like tree trimmers or construction workers or those types of people. Yes, that's true, but they're not walking around with a sun hat like that. And it just is odd. Like, you're covered from head to toe. You have your gloves on, you have the Nike shoes on. It's just very suspicious stuff. Like, this is just suspicious. But he thought he was a genius by doing this. And this is what's so fascinating to me during the trial, is that he claims that he was being framed. Now, this is where it gets absolutely insane. He claims he was being framed by Compass Realty. Okay. Now, if you're not familiar with Compass Realty, it's a very large real estate brokerage firm. There's plenty of uh, offices out here, and there's plenty of they're all across the United States. He was trying to say Compass Realty framed him for this murder because he was reducing the commission that they were getting from these estate sales. So they murdered Jeff Gurman to frame Robert Tellis to then put him in prison. That is what his story was. No lie. What? I that was the most far-fetched story I think I've ever heard in my life. But aside from his alibi, he goes to Jeff Gurman's house wearing this, and is laying in wait for Jeff Gurman to come around the side of his house. And when he does, he stabs him to death. There's a tussle. You can see all of this on someone's Ring camera, a neighbor's Ring camera. There's a tussle, and that is when Jeff is murdered. You then see this same figure walking back to the car that they used to park, which is the same exact car as Robert Tellis, a car he doesn't frequently drive, but still same car. Okay? Huge. It's like, I think it's a Denali, a red Denali, very distinctive as well. Gets in the car, drives back to his home. They have all of this on video footage, by the way. Every single bit of it. Him driving there, him driving back, him walking from the car there, him walking back. You couldn't have more definitive evidence that this man committed the murder. And aside from it being all on video, there's literal DNA evidence of Robert Tellis under Jeff Gurman's fingernails. How did that get there? Ask Robert Tellis. Robert Tellis says the police put it there. He doesn't know how it got there, but he believes he was framed. Everyone is working together. Compass Realty, the police department is working with Compass Realty, all to frame Robert Tellis. Everyone has it out for him, if in case you didn't know. He's an innocent bystander. How dare they? How dare they frame him for this murder after he was just trying to do the right thing in the public administrator's office? He was doing the right thing. How dare they? So let me see if they show the car here. Oh, I always do that. Okay, let me see if they show the car here. Um, I can't remember if they do. This is the guy from Compass Realty that's testifying right here. He clearly said, no, we wouldn't want to murder him over this. Let me just jump ahead and see if they show the car. Oh, here we go. They show the car in just a second here. So this is the car. It's a maroon, it's a maroon GMC Denali. Clear as day that this is the car. Now, what Robert Tellis tries to say is that his rims are different than the uh, the person who committed the murder. His rims are different. The rims aren't different. The rims are exactly the same. Let me see if they show the comparison of the the car that actually, and here he is in trial. Oh my gosh. I saw someone make a comment about Pinky and the Brain. Now, this is like a 90s throwback if you don't know Pinky and the Brain. Um, I'm definitely like a 90s baby, so well, yeah. But Pinky and the Brain, it's like he's all pinky but no brain. I mean, he has a huge head though. Okay, they didn't show that's fine. They didn't show the perpetrator's car, but it is the same car. So just remember that. It's the same car. It's irrelevant. Anyway, so Robert Tellis, he murders Jeff German. He claims that he's being framed, all of this stuff. Luckily, he was found guilty. It, I do also want to say, let me just back up before I talk about that. The fact that he did a narrative testimony and the fact that he thought he was so convincing up there was ridiculous. Okay? Ridiculous. He wasn't convincing anyone at all. At all. You didn't convince me. You didn't convince the man down the street. No one. He was so full of himself during that narrative testimony and tried to come off so meek and mild and, oh, okay, can I, may I, judge, may I? Please stop it. And then the whole thing with his shoe and bringing out his shoe and I have lifts in my shoe. I would have convicted him just off of that. You're wearing lifts in your shoe. If you lie, you can kill. If you kill, you can steal. Well, I think it goes if you steal, you can, or if you lie, you can steal. If you steal, you can kill. But anyway, I thought that was so odd when he brought that up. It was the strangest thing to me, him bringing up his shoes. And it convinced like you're trying to um deflect from the reality of what is happening, and you bringing up your shoes was one of those deflections. So I say all that to say, with all the surmounting evidence against him, thank goodness the jury found him guilty, but it was a close one. Jury, it took them 3 days, I believe, to come back with a verdict. What was that about? Apparently, there were some jurors that were held up on the side profile of Robert Tellis in the car, one of the video footage where you can see him in the car, but it looked like there was like a bit of hair there. And they said, well, if that was that couldn't have been Robert Tellis because he doesn't have hair, he's bald. But it could have easily been a shadow, it could have been a wig, it could have been so many other things. But that's why you were concerned because of some picture with a shadow? When you have DNA, they have the DNA of Robert Tellis under Jeff German's fingernails. You have the hat in his house cut up. You have the shoes that you see him wearing in the house cut up. And one good thing that the defense attorney brought up is you say you're being framed, but the murder weapon wasn't in your house, nor was that bright construction jacket. If you were being framed, wouldn't the people framing you plant that in your house as well? And he had no response. He also had no response to why he didn't answer his wife when he claimed that he was at home. His wife texted him right around the time of the murder. I want to say like within minutes. And he didn't respond because he left his phone at home, claimed that he was home or that he had went on a walk around the block. And it's like, when you tell like one truth, but there's still many lies. Like, yes, he was on a walk during that time. He was walking towards Jeff German's house to murder him. I believe that. I believe he was on a walk. True. Very true. Anyway, they did convict him, so I'm going to be grateful of that. But also he got life. He got life with the possibility of parole, so he can get out within 20 years, which is absurd to me. And it's seeming like the one of the jurors came out and said what swayed them on wanting to give him life with the possibility of parole was the fact that his mother had said that he uh he won't be able to see his kids again, and she would like for him to have the opportunity to see his kids again. And it's like, ma'am, I'm sorry. I feel for you. I'm sorry that you've lost your son because he's a murderer and you clearly enabled him into being a murderer. because you don't want him to face consequences for murdering. If you say that you accept the jury's verdict, that means you accept that he's a murderer. And if that's the case, then your murderer's son shouldn't get out. I'm sorry, but it's not the jury that's keeping him away from his kids. It's Robert Tellis who's keeping him away from his kids. He chose to murder. So when you choose to murder, there are consequences. And one of those consequences may be that you won't see your kids outside of a jail or a prison. You won't see them. That's a choice that Robert Tellis made, not the jury. You're not going to put that on me. If I was on the jury, ma'am, you're not putting that on me. No, he's going away for the rest of his life because we don't need him in society. And let me tell you also why we don't need him in society. He won't admit that he murdered him. It's not like he's saying, I did it. I completely blew up. I was wrong. I I was enraged or whatever excuse he wants to come up with. Fine. He can't even admit that he did it. He is still saying he's being framed. So why would I give someone like that the option for parole? You can't even admit that you did it. So that leads me to believe you have no sympathy or remorse for doing so, which means you are not parole eligible. I don't even want to give you the option of parole. So that was what was said. I do get the victim impact statements being very moving. I was very moved by Jeff German's family and his siblings coming up there and speaking, and it it just it touched my soul. Like it kind of made me tear up a little bit because it was like he was just doing the right thing. And like I said at the beginning of this segment, being a truth seeker should not you should not be punished for just being a truth seeker. And that's what happened. Just because you want to lie and live a seedy life doesn't mean I want to. And Jeff German didn't. So it's just amazing to me that Robert Tellis had more of an ego than the mobsters who knew better to not murder Jeff German. That says a lot. That says a lot. And moving on, I know this video is getting a little bit long, but I do want to quickly cover the Sandra Birchman. So I just want to let's talk about Sandra Birchman really quick. And not that I want to speed through this story. I don't have all of the relevant information on this story. I really just started getting into the story about a couple of days ago. And like I said earlier, when I realized that the same players that were involved in the Karen Reed case were or are involved with Sandra Birchman, it's like, wait a minute. What is going on? Boston, Stoughton, what is going on out there? Please tell me. Please, I need to know. What is going on? Why are you guys into so much seediness? There's too much within the past couple of years, there's been too much seediness happening out there. So, really quick, so this happened in Massachusetts, as we know. So, Sandra Birchman was murdered, supposedly, allegedly, by a former police officer, Matthew Farwell. Sandra Birchman joined something called the Police Explorers, the Stoughton Police Explorers, back in 2010. She was 12 years old at this time. 12, okay? 12. This Police Explorers program is supposed to be a program that kind of gets kids into the police force or interested in public service and civil service. And I think that's a cool thing. I think it builds a sense of community. It builds that bond. Um, I know years ago they did a program in my neighborhood where it was not like you kind of had an opportunity to go to the police station, meet with police officers, see their day to day, see how they take fingerprints, you see a jail cell. Like as a kid, that can go many ways where you're like, whoa, I don't want to be in here. Or two, I would love to work in here. Or three, maybe you think it's cool and you do want to be in there. Like it can go many ways. But I remember that when I was a kid. Now, it was like one day or so, and I think they did have something else where you can like volunteer. I never did that, but it wasn't it wasn't anything that I think my parents would have been like, "Oh no, I'm not going to have you around all of those male police officers." No, because they're police officers and they're here to protect and serve. Unfortunately, that's not what happened with Sandra Birchman. Would did I say Sandra Birchmore? I did. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm saying her name correctly. Yeah, Sandra Birchmore was groomed, was groomed from a very young age by it seemed like at least three police officers. It also seems like this Stoughton Police Explorers program was created just with the purpose to groom and abuse children. That seems like what the purpose of it was. Okay? Because the founder, I think his name was Robert, he was the chief, the audacity that you think that people are here to help and support you. I want to get his name while I have you guys here. Let me see. Rich Moore. Um, so his name was Robert Devine. Robert Devine was he was the fourth person. Okay. I'm gonna look into this a little bit more, but that's why I say I don't want to breeze through this because I want to get more information on this, but I want to give you guys the high level overview. The names are not really important right now. The major player is Matthew Farwell because that's who murdered her, allegedly. Sandra was groomed from a very young age. Around 15 is when Matthew is confirmed to have started a statutory rape of Sandra Birchmore. She they have text messages detailing when he took her virginity. Sick stuff. I want to say he was in his late 20s at the time when he did this. It kind of makes me physically sick because she was so young and you are a police officer. You are the one that's supposed to protect and serve. You're the one that she should be calling saying, "This creepy man is trying to abuse me." You should be the one to. It's heartbreaking to know this. And I believe there was a bit of, I guess, Stockholm syndrome going on there for Sandra, obviously, because I think she believed she was in love with her abuser. I think that she was so stunted by that abuse from such a young age that she still had not come to recognize that she was still being abused. Okay? Because this relationship continued well into 2021. That is when Sandra is pregnant. And that is what leads up to Matthew murdering her because he did not want her to have his baby. She wanted to have his baby. She was very much excited about it. And it's reported that Sandra is an oversharer, very much an oversharer. She was telling everyone she was pregnant from when she was very early on. I want to say 6 weeks or so. She's telling coworkers, "I'm pregnant." I want to even say she was telling people it was a police officer and he's married and he has a family. And yes, I'm still pregnant by him. She just told people her business. She was one of those. And I respect those people because if we didn't have all this information, we probably wouldn't have known that he murdered her. He staged her murder like a suicide, a hanging. And the only thing that the coroner initially ruled it as a suicide. The only thing that kind of brought it back to light was Karen Reed's case. People saying justice, while they're out there for Karen Reed, justice for Sandra. Now, the Karen Reed case is a whole nother can of worms. I am not well versed on it, but what I do know is that they're framing Karen Reed for murder of her boyfriend And there's way too much evidence to suggest that she's being framed and did not murder him. Way too much evidence. In addition to these same officers being involved. I want to say Matthew Farwell himself would question Karen Reed. He is not someone that can be trusted. Not in a law enforcement capacity, not in a society capacity. But there was a ruling of suicide. But being that a certain bone that was broken, that's atypical for breaking during a self inflicted hanging, that's also what lended to the fact that this is not a suicide. So, this is definitely a case I want to keep an eye on because I do believe there's a lot of corruption going on out there. And I do believe this is something that needs to be looked into. And I really hope that this sheds more light on the child abuse aspect of it, which is sick, but also the police corruption aspect of it, which it builds upon the child abuse aspect because if the abusers are the law enforcement, and this is why I said in an earlier video, why do we keep protecting child predators? Why are they not convicted to the fullest extent of the law? I wonder. I wonder. So with that, um, we'll keep an eye. We'll definitely keep an eye on Sandra Birchmore, but it does seem that, towards the end of the relationship or right before the murder, Matthew Farwell was trying to pretend like he wanted the baby, pretend like he wanted to move in or get a key to the place and build a relationship there. And she believed it, but it was all a lie. And she was murdered on February 1st. The following day, Matthew Farwell's son was born. Hours later. And I just thought to myself how sick it is that this man took a life and then simultaneously brought another life into the world. I think he had some type of God complex in the sense of he knew he was having a baby that was being born, and he not just took one life, he took two. He took the baby's life, he took Sandra's life, and the unborn child's life as well. Ugh, absolutely heartbreaking, but we are definitely going to keep an eye on this because it's just not okay. It's not okay. So, the final topic we're going to talk about just very briefly is a case that happened out here, which really I thought was odd stuff. I'm going to get right into it. Let's just fade over to this. You may have seen this footage. My jaw was dropped when I saw this. Okay. This is a superintendent in a building in Harlem kicking his tenant down the stairs and then proceeds to beat him. Okay? This was captured on a neighbor's Ring doorbell camera. And what's odd is also you're going to see there's another figure, like another blurred out figure, which seems to be another neighbor that seems to be on the ground as well. I don't know the details of it, but it seems like this superintendent, there was a dispute over rent, and this is how he responded. I mean, it's quite shocking. And what I said to myself is if this is what you're doing over rent, what do you think is going to happen after this? Because I know if I was that tenant, that that super is getting sued, that building is getting sued, all of it. I will own that building by the end of it. You kicked me down a flight of stairs and you started beating me in the hallway. Who do you think you are? So this, I want to warn you right now, this is very graphic because you see this man falling down the stairs. It is horrible. And then getting beaten. And then apparently he kicks him down another flight of stairs after that. We need to shed light on this because typically I am very much pro landlord and pro building management, but obviously this is not okay. This is unacceptable. And the reason why I say that is because in a lot of these tenant friendly states, tenants get away with murder. And I'm not even, I say that facetiously, but they really do, in the sense of they will live rent free for years. When I say 3 years, and you're still trying to get the person out through housing court, and you cannot. So I hope that's not the case. And even if that is the case, that doesn't excuse you kicking someone down the stairs. It doesn't. It doesn't. Even if he hasn't paid rent in forever, it doesn't excuse it. I can understand the frustration, especially if you're a private landlord. But as far as I understand, this guy's the super. He's not the landlord. He's not getting that rent money himself. He just gets paid by them. So why are you taking this so personally? Anyway, let's just watch the clip really quick.
That video, recorded just after 8 o'clock Saturday morning, shows a 26-year-old male tenant getting kicked down a flight of stairs, police say, by the building super. The attacker, identified by police as 45-year-old Nick Valentine, then picks up a wrench and continues beating the tenant. Seconds later, as the tenant begins to walk away, the attacker kicks him down another flight of stairs. Police say the dispute inside this East 112th walk-up near 3rd Avenue was over rent, adding the victim sustained lacerations to his right hand and had pain in his left arm. Outside the building, neighbors,
Oh my God.
oh, were in disbelief.
I think that is not the way that you're going to get your rent at all, obviously.
At all.
You're not going to get your rent that way, so I don't understand.
Valentine is now charged with a felony second-degree assault that could land him in prison. Police sources tell us he has no criminal history, but after seeing what their own building staff is...
Yeah, you had no criminal history until you knock someone down a flight of stairs twice. I want him in prison. I'm sorry. You're not stable. You're not stable. So someone else will set you off, and then you're going to think it's okay to do that to them. You need to be in prison. I don't care. And this is the, yeah, it doesn't have a criminal history. You don't know what he's done. Just because someone never got caught doing it doesn't mean that they never did a crime. And that's the frustration part. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to leave it here, guys. I really appreciate you guys staying with me for this video. And I just really wanted to catch you guys up on a few topics. I will put timestamps on this video just to kind of make it easy to watch. And if you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, please definitely put them in the comment box below. I really appreciate the engagement. Please remember to like, follow, subscribe to my page. I really appreciate the support. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys have a good one. Bye.